Hey, Peace Collective. This is Candace Green. I'm so happy to be with you in 2021 and for episode 134 of Cherishedflight, the podcast. We're in a new year. God has done a new thing, and we are super excited about what God is going to do this year. He carried us through such a tumultuous year of 2020, but we know that God has some new things and some amazing things for us, and we're just celebrating and happy about it. So I hope you're celebrating and are happy about it with me, Peace Collective. So I'm also excited because January is a really good month for me. It's my birthday month, and my podcast anniversary is this month. What does that mean? Oh, it means that I am celebrating the 6th anniversary of Cherishedflight, the podcast. Can you believe it? When I started this podcast 6 years ago, I just wanted to be able to be a voice of encouragement for all of us who may be suffering from what did I call it? The Sunday blues. That means that the night before you go back to work, most people feel a little anxious about going back to work on Monday, especially after, the weekend and resting. And then you start thinking around 6, 7 o'clock on Sunday night, oh, I got to go back to work. And I started seeing on my social media timelines people posting about how anxious they were about going back to work, and people having panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And I said to my husband, somebody needs to reach out to them to let them know that everything's going to be all right, to encourage them. My husband said, that somebody is you. So we started the podcast, and here we are 6 years later. Now, here's a little trivia for some of you. The original name of Cherishedflight, the podcast, was not Cherishedflight, the podcast. So, tell me this. In my comments below, please let me know if you remember what the original title was for Cherishedflight, the podcast. And the person who sends me that message will get a free Inhale Peace, a 31-day journey to realign with God's peace devotional. So all you have to do is tell me what was the original name for Cherishedflight, the podcast. If you know it, put it in the comments below or shoot me a DM so I can let everybody know which part of the Peace Collective answered correctly, and I will put it in the mail for you. All right? So again, the question is, what was the original name for Cherishedflight, the podcast? I'm not going to tell you. All right. So the very first episode of Cherishedflight, the podcast, was all about peace breaks. I introduced the peace break to all of you, and then I shared how to take a peace break. And this is the perfect segue because every podcast, what I do, we take a peace break together. But before we do that, I ask you this very question. Have you been making time in your day to reconnect with the peace of God? Have you been pushing back from the email and the voicemails and all the calls that are coming into your office, the meetings, to sit outside, breathe, and reconnect with the peace of God? If you have not, that is okay, because you can start right now. See, the peace break is your opportunity to connect with God's peace. In the middle of your day, when things are going just running and gunning and running and gunning and grinding and grinding and running and grinding, running and gunning, all you have to do is say, stop. I'm not answering this email right now. I'm not answering this call right now. Hold on the meeting. I need to step outside. And when you go outside, you breathe. You exhale. And you reconnect with that peace of God through your prayers. That's it. It sounds like it's really simple. It's a simple technique because it is simple. Because that breath helps to regulate your heart rate and get your mind focused. And God can meet you in that place to pour his peace into you. All right, so if you're not taking your peace breaks, please do. It's so important. Taking them is so important because, listen, maintaining the peace of God is not a passive action. It is an act of aggression. And when you maintain that peace of God, that means that When you're asking for God's peace, that means that you are choosing God's peace over chaos and confusion and anxiety and all of that. You're choosing God's peace with this umbrella of peace that you're going to stand under. Everything else can still be going on, but you're standing under that umbrella of peace. So that's what the peace break is all about, just reconnecting you with God's peace. So we're going to take a peace break in just a minute, but that was the first episode of Cherishedflight, the podcast. And I'm just so elated that you all have been sticking with me for 134 episodes, sharing it with your family and friends, sending me messages about how the podcast has resonated with you. And I thank you. I thank you, because there would be no 6 years without my Peace Collective. So thank you so, so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Now, here's the thing. From March to the beginning of January, we did peace breaks every day. My Peace Collective and I, we met on Instagram and Facebook at lunchtime every day at our virtual oasis, as I called it, and we took our peace breaks together. But for 2021, we're going to still be doing our peace breaks, but on Mondays. We're coming back to that original idea of encouraging everybody on Mondays. So Mondays at lunchtime, 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to be meeting on Instagram for our live peace breaks every Monday. It's called Peace Break Mondays. And I hope that you join me there. So on that day that seems to cause us all so much anxiety, we can breathe and reconnect with God's peace together as a collective. All right. So share that with your family and friends. You'll see it posted on all of my social media channels, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Cherishedflight. So you can follow along and take the peace break with all of us, the Peace Collective. Join in the collective together live. All right. Every Monday. Okay, so now that we've gotten all that out of the way, I want to talk about inviting God in. That is our first topic for 2021, inviting God in. But before we get there, we're going to do our peace break together. Had to put my little blowy whistle thing to the side. We're going to take our peace break together. So sit back, close your eyes, and let's get centered in God's peace. So let's inhale peace. Exhale fear. Inhale peace. Exhale worry. Inhale peace. Exhale stress. Inhale peace. Exhale everything else. Inviting God in. So I was listening to a podcast by Ruth Haley Barton, and she's a theologian who really wants to talk about spiritual direction and Sabbath, how to maintain balance with Sabbath in our lives. And she's written this book that I've been reading called An Invitation to Solitude and Silence. And in this book, she asks a very interesting question, which is, when was the last time you invited God into your situation? I had to think about that for a minute. Say, when was the last time I asked God? I invited God, not asked, but when I invited God into my situation. And I had to think about it because it's not often that I do this intentionally. And here's why. First, I think there are 3 reasons why I haven't done it. First is I think that my problem is too small for God, for God's attention. God, where are my keys? God, I'm lost. Which direction should I go? Like, literally lost in my car. My GPS isn't working and I'm lost. God, I can't figure this out. It's such a small thing, but I don't want to bring you into it because it is so small. I don't want to bring you into it because you've got bigger things to do. So I don't invite God into that situation. The next reason why I feel like I sometimes don't invite God into my situations because I think I got this. I don't need your help on this one, God. Because I can handle it. I know how to navigate this thing, and I don't need you to intervene. Go ahead and do what you're doing for everybody else because I don't need you to intervene. Okay. And the third is I don't want God to see the mess that I've created. Like when you were a kid and you did something and you knew that whatever you did was wrong, so you hid in the house because you didn't want your parents to find out what you had done. That's kind of what I'm talking about when I create a situation that's just messy. And then I don't want to invite God in because I don't want God to see the mess that I created. Here's the thing. God wants to be involved in all of it. When you've lost your keys, when you're lost trying to find a location, the things you think you can handle, the situations that create a mess, the muck and the mire. God wants to be in the thick of it all. But he can't if we don't invite him in. God wants to be invited in. He's not going to bum rush the scene. No, God is going to wait until you say, you are welcome in this space. God, come in. I need you. God wants to be needed. God wants us to need him and to want him to be a part of our everyday, to be a part of our decision making, to be a part of our thoughts, to be a part of what we say. God wants to be in all of it. He wants to be in the thick of it, in all of it. So here's the thing. If we don't invite God in, well, once we invite God in, then we can give him those things that are burdening us. See, when our hearts are heavy and when we are carrying so much load, we can't give God the space he needs to operate. So we have to exchange one for another. God comes in, everything else goes out. God comes in and we push out everything. That's what Matthew 11:28 is all about. Come unto me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. So God exchanges those burdens when he's invited into our hearts for rest, for peace, for joy, for hope, because that's what God's presence brings to our lives. In the midst of everything, when we invite God into our situations and he takes over, then he takes the burden out that we've been carrying. It's that simple. I've also found that Psalm 46, 1-2 says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. When we invite God into our hearts and into our situations, into our circumstances, into the muck and the mire and everything that we're dealing with, he then becomes our strength to help us deal with the situation, our refuge to keep us safe and protected, our peace when chaos and confusion is all around us. God is those things. When we invite him in, we begin to see and to feel and to experience him. When we invite God into our lives, we begin to trust him because we see God operating. We begin to know that he is faithful and will never, ever leave us or forsake us. We begin to understand that God is for us and who can be against us. See, we begin to see God work, which means that we build our faith and trust in God in every situation. The hard times, the easy times, the difficult times, the times in our lives when we're feeling joy. God wants us to invite him into our hearts, into our lives. There's a song by a group called Forever Jones that I really love. It's called He Wants It All. He wants it all. And that means he wants it all of us, all that we're going through, all that we're thinking, all that we are experiencing. God wants it all. He wants it all. So he can handle it and show us that he loves us. That's it. That is episode 134 of Cherishedflight, the podcast. I hope that this message resonates with you and that you really make the decision to invite God into your situation. Invite God into your circumstances. Invite God into your muck and the mire, because he's going to clean it, cleanse it, heal you, and set you straight. Order your steps so that you can then operate the way that he created you to operate. Invite God in. He's waiting for you to say, come in. All right. You can listen to all 134 episodes of Cherishedflight, the podcast, by going to my website, cherishedflight.com. You can find the podcast also on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Play Music, Google Play Music, and Amazon, which I'm new on Amazon. You can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as Cherished Flight. And remember, the raffle is going to be, if anybody can tell me what the original name of Cherishedflight, the podcast was or is, what was the original name, then I will send you a copy of Inhale Peace, a 31-day journey to realign with God's peace, just for you. All right. I hope that, again, that this resonates with you and that you share it with your family and friends. Open your heart and invite God in. I'll see you next week for Cherishedflight, the podcast. And until then, may the peace of God settle into your spirit.